The day is October 23rd, 2023. It was a cool and misty day in the UK, nothing out of the ordinary, just a regular day. 10:09 PM. Lethal Company hits the Steam shop. A simple co-op survival horror where you are tasked with collecting scrap from abandoned planets to make a profit, while also surviving the horrors that lurk inside. A simple premise. However, this game was more than that. On this day, Lethal Company changed the landscape for online co-op games forever. No one could have expected Lethal Company to blow up as much as it did, almost overnight. With such a simple premise, it would have been considered just another indie horror if it wasn't for its multiplayer aspect. The thing that really made Lethal stand out was the fact that you could use proximity chat with your friends. Now, I can almost guarantee that Lethal Company probably wasn't the first game to use proximity chat. However, that, plus the simple art style and silly character models, and the horror element, just created the perfect multiplayer experience that also had built-in perfect comedic timing.
Right.
Oh, what's that?
Right.
There's
Hold
another
the
toy
six, hold
train.
the-
Oh! I love Lethal Company so much. I played it a ton when it came out, and I come back to it every now and again just to play for a bit, and the mod support for it adds so much to the game too. Oops. The monsters work so well for the style of game, my favourite being the Bracken and the situations that can happen with it. He's coming! Lethal Company absolutely kicked off what is now known as Friendslop. And just quickly, Friendslop was initially used as a sort of slanderous term for games that just copied Lethal Company, as they were seen as simple games just quickly slapped together to make some easy money. But back in my day, these games were called party games, or multiplayer games. But at this point, Friendslop is just the genre of game, so who cares? Anyway, back to Lethal. I think its first big clone, shall we say, was Content Warning, as this one also blew up slightly. I also played Content Warning for a bit, and I did enjoy it for a period. However, the problem with Content Warning was ironically its lack of content. Every map felt the same, the creatures weren't that interesting, and the process of unlocking items at the shop was a slog. I really do love the whole concept of the game, as it creates some really funny moments. However, the game really needed updates.
I want updates for Content Warning!
There are other Lethal Company clones that came along. However, I feel like Content Warning was the main one that was actually successful for a period of time. Overall, when it comes to Lethal Company, it was absolutely the founding father of the Friendslop genre, and a lot of games wouldn't exist without it. I still personally think it might be my favourite, if not second favourite, out of the bigger Friendslop games, as it just holds up really well and the modding community for the game is huge. R.E.P.O came out a few months after Lethal Company, February 26th, 2025 to be exact, and it is easily the second biggest Friendslop game for the time. It was the only other game to absolutely explode in popularity like Lethal Company did, and it very clearly took a lot of inspiration from it too. From the monsters, the overall goal of the game, and even the proximity chat, R.E.P.O was the first truly successful Friendslop game after Lethal Company, and was able to create its own personality. The memes of this game were iconic, and you've probably heard of them even if you haven't played the game. I love. One of my favourite parts of R.E.P.O, as I also love this game, is the fact that the proximity chat makes the robots' mouths move. It adds just that little bit of extra personality to the game that separates it from being just a simple Lethal Company clone, and it makes the comedic moments in the game that much better. R.E.P.O also had a huge update at one point, adding a lot to the game, including more creatures, which was something games like Content Warning were missing. This just kept the game fresh, and it added so much more to do to the game, and there was more in this update than just the creatures, but I feel like the creatures were the standout point of this update. Not only that, but there were plenty of unique maps and a lot of fun items to use within the game in general, giving players so much to do and experiment with. R.E.P.O, like Lethal Company, also has a very big modding community, which once again just gives the game so much more life. I consider R.E.P.O to be Lethal's first real successor, which is why I consider it a part of this holy trinity. It stood out enough to have a whole TikTok phase and a Fortnite skin, as well as incredibly popular memes. By the way, these 3 games in this video are the only quote-unquote Friendslop games with Fortnite skins, I think, which by itself says a lot. At least I think so. The one to complete the Trinity. The one that broke the mold from multiplayer horror games and had its own concept and mechanics, yet was still able to explode in popularity and might have even been more popular than Lethal Company was back in its prime. I'm not fact-checking that because it sounds less cool for the introduction. Peak came out quite a while after both Lethal Company and R.E.P.O, however it blew up immediately. It released on June 16th, 2025, and just recently had its last major update, which I played with friends, and you should go watch it. Not only did Peak also have its own TikTok phase, and continues to, thanks to its last update, as well as a Fortnite skin and lots of iconic memes, but it's the only big Friendslop game that got nominated for an award at the Game Awards, specifically the Best Multiplayer Game Award. That is a huge accomplishment. Like I said, Peak took a completely different approach to the Friendslop style of games. It isn't a horror game, although there are some scary elements, especially in this last update. All you have to do is climb to the top of several mountains until you reach the peak. That's it. And that's all this game needed to be unbelievably popular. The silly character designs and animations gives the game so much life, the wide variety of items to use, making everyone feel different, and the daily biome rotations and random generations makes the game feel fresh every single day, as every day will be a new challenge, and even the simple form of spectating, keeping players who have died still involved in the game, as they can speak to living players and even scout out areas for them, just make sure everyone is involved during the whole run and everyone is having fun at all times. This game also has some incredibly peak, no pun intended, comedic moments. I've gotten so many myself. Adam, don't move. Adam, don't move. Stand completely still.
Oh,
No! Shit!
Did you try and grapple him?
Yeah.
No. Careful, there's another trap right here.
Ow! Peak is the only other Friendslop game I would consider to be my favourite, which is why I said at worst Lethal Company would be my second. Because there's just so much to do each time you play Peak. Even if you haven't played it, you have seen these characters, and you've surely heard of the GOAT, Boom Bang. The developers that are also so in tune with their community that bugs that shouldn't exist get patched quick, and bugs that shouldn't exist but people love actually get kept in the game to some degree. I love everything about this game, and like the other two, the modding community is again quite big, so you can always change the game up to your liking at any time, which is even better considering this update was their last major update, so as long as the modding community keeps going, the game will constantly feel fresh. Peak itself spawned quite a couple of games that could be considered clones, and like everything, all of these games that I've spoke about have Roblox clones, but realistically, what doesn't have a Roblox clone? But off the top of my head, all I can really think of is Are We There Yet, as it also has a very simple concept and has similar mechanics to Peak, specifically the resource management aspects of the game. However, I do think Are We There Yet is quite good on its own anyway. Without Lethal Company, multiplayer games could look very different today. Friendslop games should be highly appreciated no matter how many there are. Think of it like this. You could either spend £10, $10 on a game of bowling with some friends, or, good grief, or you could spend £7 or dollars on a Friendslop game to play with those same friends. However, the difference is you get to keep that game and play it whenever you want. Whereas if you want to play bowling again, you're going to have to pay again. Or do both, I don't care, it's your money. All I'm saying is, I don't think people should complain about the existence of Friendslop games. They're actually great for kids who can't really see friends outside of places like school and cannot afford a lot, because they could just buy a cheap game to play whenever they want with friends. Also, we should just be thankful that there's this many people out there that want to make games for people to have fun with. These 3 games paved the way for future multiplayer games, and I'm sure we will see another game as big as one of these, if not bigger, sometime soon. I mean, we kind of already are with Big Walk, which I do want to play and will hopefully soon, so look out for that. I'm just trying to get people to play it with me. But I love a good bit of Friendslop from time to time, and you should too.